Welcome to the original International Teacher Podcast with hosts in 4 different time zones, Greg, Darian, Kent, JP, and Hannah, bringing you episodes from around the world about the best kept secret in education. You got it, international teaching. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to another episode of the International Teacher Podcast. I'm your host, Hannah, and today I have with me Greg calling in from...
Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
Maplewood Beats.
And also I have JP here with me calling in from Mexico.
Hello, good morning from Mexico.
And our special guest today is Robin calling in from Florida.
Wow, yeah, woohoo.
I just fangirl a little bit. So I was at TASM in the Middle East in Oman for a number of years, and I never met you in person. But of course, my head of school, Kevin Schaefer at the time, and you were very close to each other because you were in Abu Dhabi Community School as the head of school. And I always wanted to meet you because you were a bit of an inspiration for me to get into admin. So I'm very, very excited to see you on the show and hear your international journey, how you went overseas and ended up becoming heads of school in different places. So thank you so much for taking the time today to come onto the show. And we look forward to hearing your whole journey.
Thank you. I look forward to sharing it.
Yay.
You mean we have a head of school, like a former head of school on our show?
Yes.
Oh, I love it. We can never have enough admin on our show.
Yeah. Yes. Tell us a little bit about how you got into teaching and how you knew that there was this thing called international education overseas.
So getting into teaching probably started when I was in kindergarten. And I would come home and my parents had bought one of those magnetic maps of the United States and one of the world and one of the ABCs and numbers. And they also had they purchased one of those old time desks that were connected. So it was like 2 desks. And I would come home from kindergarten and my grandma would be there and she would ask me, "So what did you learn today?" So she would be holding on to our cat and listening to me teach the lesson of the day. And so I guess that's in my heart. I always knew that I would be a teacher. Indeed, that's what I went into. I'm from Wisconsin.
Greg's
What
from
part
Wisconsin.
of Wisconsin? Where?
God's country, La Crosse.
La Crosse. Okay, I'm from Green Bay.
Oh, well,
originally Milwaukee born, but Green Bay.
Each has its own marks on history. And yeah.
I hear you. Welcome. You're a great person. I know you are. Jeez.
Why did you have your Green Bay Packers hat? Oh my gosh, yesterday.
I have a cheese head little thing.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Here comes Greg's other hat.
Yeah, there we go. Of
Hey.
course. Yes. How about those Packers? When I went looking for a job, I'll date myself. I turned 70 this year. And so that puts me in a category of I graduated from high school in 74 and university in 78. And I went right to a teaching position 22 miles away from La Crosse in Sparta, Wisconsin. And if you're familiar at all with Wisconsin, that's really next door to Fort McCoy. And so as I was teaching in Sparta, Wisconsin at Sparta Senior High School, I got to know a lot of families, military families that would come in and send their kids to the school. And, that was one connection with sort of the overseas or international world. I should say that my background is that I got a degree in political science and Broadfield social studies. So that worldly vision of social studies was always a part of who I am too. I taught in Sparta, Wisconsin. I was what they called Inspector 12 because every single senior that graduated from high school in Wisconsin had to pass an American government course. one of the things I would just say politically now, I think that's what's wrong with probably the knowledge base in our United States, is that kids don't have enough of that kind of civics education and political education. Every child that went through Sparta High School had to take my course. I taught consumer economics and American government. So I was Inspector 12 for really 10 years that I was in Wisconsin teaching there. I had a good friend who was the art teacher, Jane Schartzer, who's also a name known in international education usually. She said to me one day, have you thought about international? There's this thing called international education. And there are these recruiting fairs in Iowa at University of Northern Iowa.
That's where Hannah's calling us from.
And I said, no, but sure, let's go see the world. And we drove down to UNI in February. So if you're from the Midwest at all, you know that it was cold and it was icy and not barren. The place you would generally have as a destination in February.
Not a destination vacation in the middle of February. Or ever. Nice. Apologies to Waterloo, Iowa.
That's Iowa in general, not a destination to visit, no matter what season.
We drove down there and we went to this, recruiting fair. And at that time, UNI probably had one of the biggest recruiting fairs for international education. And you'd sit around in this student union at tables and you'd hear people talking about Kuala Lumpur and Ulaanbaatar and Tegucigalpa, and we didn't even know how to say it. Jane and I were like, wow. But everyone that you talked to, every head of school that you talked to in those days said, well, you need some international experience. You need some teaching experience overseas before you hire. A completely different game of hiring. Rarely did they hire you on the spot. In fact, probably you had to be a physics teacher who had outstanding recommendations and everything else. But in those days, I remember receiving a telegram asking me if I wanted a job from Stavanger, Norway, and telephone, if they had a telephone in their location that they could call out on and make an international call. Wow. Or they would try and catch you, because a lot of times heads of school had to go back and have their boards approve who they were hiring, which was also a very interesting change. And so we went the first year and we both said, this seems really interesting. How can we get international experience? So Jane did some research and she came across this program of visiting teacher overseas at University of Wisconsin River Falls. And we both went. The next year we were planning to do that. And she went to London and I went to Edinburgh, Scotland. And I was a visiting teacher in an all-boys school teaching religion and history. And she was an art teacher teaching art in a school in London. When we went back to the recruiting fair then, it was not the next year. We went to the recruiting fair, heard the same things. Jane was actually offered a job before she went to London that year. We went during that next summer. And that was the teaching experience. So Jane went to Kinshasa, Zaire at the time, Democratic Republic of Congo now. And of course, she didn't have email. You could not make a phone call from Zaire. And she wrote these long letters on those little one-page things that you tried to fit everything on. And you,
Oh, yeah.
Hold it up again, something, it's like the rotary phone. A lot of people won't even know what I'm talking about. And she said, we'll have a social studies position open. Are you interested? And I had received an offer that year to go to Stavanger, Norway. And then the next year that I went, an offer to go to Kinshasa to teach social studies. I thought Stavanger, cold, night a lot, dark a lot, or daylight a lot. Kinshasa, really hot and warm, and a place, it's Africa. And so I chose, and I had a friend there. So that was the start of my journey. And
Wow.
boy, I knew from the minute I was at the school, the American School of Kinshasa, meeting the people that I did, that this would be a part of my world. But it was like that 10-year, 12-year sort of itch. Is this really what I want to do as far as teaching? And as far as where I want to be, I knew I wanted that overseas was really appealing to me. So I taught social studies at TASAC, and for 2 years, decided I wanted to see about going back and getting my doctorate. So I went during the summer between my first and second year at Kinshasa and interviewed different universities, and ended up getting a full fellowship to University of Oregon to work on a PhD in curriculum and instruction.
Now, when you say full fellowship, does that mean it's paid for?
Yeah, I had it was not only like
look at Anna's
fellowship
face.
type of thing, but it was work study, and I was like in the office of teaching, and so supervising student teachers, but then also really advising people going into education. So yes, it was a work study fellowship that, with scholarships and everything. It was really, and it was 2 years.
And that's full time in Oregon. Not, I mean, obviously nothing online or
No,
anything like that. Yeah.
Still, not. I think I bought my first Mac computer.
Ooh.
My very first.
I can
one.
picture it. I can pick the little white square one with the little screen. Yeah.
Oh my God. But internet, no, that wasn't a part of reality then. There were games and there were things. But I knew also that I really wanted to go back overseas and not stay in the United States. It just was appealing to me. So I did that for 2 years, went recruiting, and
back to Northern Iowa again?
Back to Northern Iowa, you and I, yes. That again, that was still 78, 80, that was 80 then, 81, or 80, 87, I went to Kinshasa. 89, I came back. I did 2 years at University of Northern Iowa. So the early 90s. Greg.
Hi, longtime listener. Listen, I have a quick caveat
you can
question.
Edit any of this.
I know, right?
No,
I don't want to, though. It's sort of fun. I feel like a little kid again talking about this. I've been to uni 3 times, but the first time was in 2001. That very first time I went there, I was like, someday I'm going to be up on that stage with all of the experienced panelists. Did they have a panel? Do you remember? Did they do the panel back then?
Not during those years. I can't.
Okay, I was just wondering.
I don't remember that. I remember that from like when I would go to, I think ISS or Search.
Right.
Well, okay. ISS had.
I know they morph a lot, and they're changing all over the years. But it's one of my fascinations is those job fairs.
Oh yeah, and
wanting
sitting
to get
at
up
those
on stage.
tables and listening to people talk about the different places in the world, and it was a big round student center, and then all of the university, they switched from University of Northern Iowa to another location in Iowa, and so maybe it wasn't at a university. Well, I think UNI has always hosted it.
Yeah.
Right.
But it was 2 different locations. When you were at UNI, the original one, there was really only one place that you went out to eat at, and that was a Chinese restaurant there. Chinese restaurant in Iowa.
Nice.
But I remember when I finished my doctorate, and while I was in the course of, I had finished my dissertation and was getting ready to present in that year, but I went recruiting. And there was a job opening in Rabat, Morocco. And this was 1991. So the ground war in Iraq it had just broken out. And I was offered I was talking to Jim Ambrose, who was in Abu Dhabi at that time, Bob Sills, who was in Rabat, and Rick Spradling, who was in Tunisia. And so my experience in talking with those three people, again, which has never changed, there's this competition among heads. And so who's going to get this person? And so the three of them were talking to each other about me. And Jim said, well, I need to interview another couple. And I said, well, I'm going to go and talk to Bob Sills now. And I fully expect being made an offer, a job offer. And then Jim leaned back and he said, well, I think I want to offer you a job too. And so,
what a game.
As a candidate, for anyone who is seeking a position, always keep that in your back pocket. And so I wanted to go to Rabat. Bob Sills was bigger than life at that time, and probably the person who supported me going to the dark side of it, the administrative side of education. And Rabat and Morocco, I couldn't have found a better place to go after that. And I was teaching, but I was also the curriculum coordinator. That was just the time period too that curriculum coordinators became a thing at a school, an actual position at a school. And so I was on the groundwork of that, which really was an opportunity, a golden opportunity for me. I hadn't wanted to go into the principalship or the headship, forget it. In my third year, Bob made a decision to go to the U.S. to do a sabbatical and finish his doctorate at Harvard my fourth year. And he put me in charge of the self-study with Middle States. And that was another opportunity to really lead. And again, he had encouraged me, significant encouragement, to go into administration or to go more into a higher level administration. And that fourth year, when I went recruiting, there were a lot of director of curriculum and instruction and professional development, primarily in Asia. Those were the Asian schools. So when I went recruiting that year, and Bob supported me wholeheartedly, I ended up in Kuala Lumpur at ISKL.
Can we just take a step back? The Middle School Association, or Middle States Association. So this is an accreditation body. Can you tell us a little bit about what does that look like when they come into the school, or what are you doing to prepare?
Generally speaking, all of the American international schools that are affiliated with the Office of Overseas Schools, but even if they aren't affiliated, if they're a private school overseas with an American education, one of the things they strive for is a U.S. accreditation, which accreditation is basically a validation of what you're doing. There are a set of standards that each of the accrediting agencies in the world, and the world basically was divided into a number of regions. Middle States Association of Schools and Colleges sort of took all of Africa and probably Eastern Europe. Western Association of Schools and Colleges, WASC, took all of Asia, because obviously geographically they were located there. Southern Association of Schools and Colleges, which is now Cognia, took Central and South America and the Caribbean. New England Association of Schools and Colleges really went into Europe along with Middle States. New England didn't go as much overseas to begin with, but they've obviously become a major presence now. And so each of those organizations accredits schools in the United States, but they also have their accrediting areas overseas.
That's why we never see MSA and WASC accredited. Like, I always wondered, why is it just one? Why don't they have several accreditations? But it's because it's based on a region where the school exists.
Originally,
I learned something today.
Originally, it was. They sort of started to morph into other regions, but and what a school does is look at, here are the 12 standards, areas that, and the set of objectives under each of those areas that a school should strive for. And so the school does a self-study, and they look at themselves and evaluate and gather evidence. And then a group of what I call critical friends that are chosen by the accrediting agency come in, and they validate what you have written in your self-study, and they make recommendations about what you've written in your self-study. And if it's done well and you've engaged the community in the process, it can be really a fulfilling and growing opportunity. If it's not done well, it's done by someone in an office, and really a visiting team would be able to pick that out right away. So, and you have, what the Middle States and all of the other organizations do is they select experienced people in their fields, like administrators and teachers and directors of curriculum, from overseas schools to be a part of a visiting team. And the visiting team, it used to be that visiting team was chaired by someone from the United States that was a part of that organization, Middle States or WASC or Southern Association, NEASC. And then the team was made up of international educators. And they go into a school, and usually it's a 3 to 5 day visit, and they have the self-study ahead of time. They read everything. They look at the evidence that the school has provided, and they interview. They do interviews and focus groups. And like I used to say, I was on, because of my position as a curriculum coordinator and a director of curriculum, teaching and learning in Kuala Lumpur, I served on 26 different accreditation teams.
That's the visiting ones, or the ones where, yeah.
Oh yeah, I led accreditations in Rabat and in Kuala Lumpur, not in Buenos Aires, because I was no longer in that director of teaching and learning position. And so you get to know or feel, based on what is written and your interviews, the questions that you ask. Generally speaking, within the first day that you're there, you know if there's some issues. And so, and really, again, it's not to catch you, it's to help you. A visiting team's purpose is to really help you as a school, guide you for a better future and making improvements along the way.
Yeah, a good school is looking to improve, right?
And then once they get the accreditation, once the visiting team is there, they get a written evaluation later, guides steps to improve. And then later on, after a number of years, they are revisited to re-up their accreditation, just for our listeners, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it depends upon the number of years according to the agency that you're doing your accreditation with. So, yeah. So that was like a really positive move. I remember being on the first visiting team. I went out when I was in Rabat, and I was flying to Bahrain. And I remember getting on the flight from Rabat to Bahrain. And in the first row of the plane, in economy, of course, in the bulkhead section were 4 seats with falcons tied to the seats with their little caps on. And I said to myself, oh my God, I'm not in Kansas anymore. I am no longer in Wisconsin anymore.
Wow.
And then you flew into Bahrain, and it was this desert city that was flat, right?
Yeah.
And it's changed so much. Oh my gosh.
Oh no, I know.
It's crazy. Well, yeah, seeing some Falcons, with their little
So
helmets
economy
on
tickets, so not first class. That's always good to know. I always pictured these accreditation visitors coming into our schools as, first class tickets and then staying at the Shangri-La or
Oh no. No. Well, I mean, generally speaking, we tried to always, as a curriculum person, as one leading accreditations, we always tried to put them at a place that was it was nice, that was easy to
representative of something that was nice and it was affordable and it was within reach.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And the first class tickets, no, that didn't happen until I was the head of school.
Okay, so you're in Kuala Lumpur, and I think I heard you were now the director of teaching and learning. So
I was,
which is very similar to curriculum coordinator, but I think it's just a slightly step up. Is that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I was I have to think of my title now. Curriculum, Assessment, and Professional Development. I was the CAPT person. And the director, I think it was director. Titles, I never really cared about a title, but basically it was director of teaching and learning, because it was everything assessment, it was professional development, it was curriculum. And I was there for 6 years. I was in what they call a staff administrative position, because I didn't directly supervise any other, except the people in my office, which was one person. But being in Asia, especially Southeast Asia, there was a group of curriculum coordinators, directors of teaching and learning, that became very close. And Dick Kreitzer hired me to go to Kuala Lumpur, and he became the executive director of AirCos. And so he always organized and supported his directors of teaching and learning and the directors of that in the region, because he knew that as a head of school, if you wanted to make things easier as a head of school, if you have a good director of teaching and learning, you've got a lot of parents that are not going to come to your office. They're going to go to that
more filters.
Yeah. And kids would ask, when I would ever interview with kids at the school, they would say, "What's your job?" And I said, my job is really like a make work job. I make work for people. I make them do the curriculum. I make them go to professional development. And they were confused by that, but that was okay. So I was there for 6 years, learned a great deal. And one of my colleagues at that time, Dennis Larkin, said, "Robin, in the job that you're in now, there really are no M&Ms. There's no candy. It's not like you get a lot of treats, because no one really likes the work that you
because you make work for other people." I'm thinking back to my curriculum coordinators that were overseeing me as a teacher, and it's like, when I saw them coming down the hallway, I'd be like, boop.
Well, it's sort of like you're in between the staff and you're in between the admin, so you're not quite on the inner circle of a school, and these international schools tend to have those inner circle of admin. And then you've got your staff. You had to be somewhere in between. The staff didn't like it because it's like, no. So no M&Ms. What did you do?
No M&Ms.
Did you pivot? Go somewhere else?
I said, and this became then the trend. I started out teaching. I went into teaching and admin, and then going to Kuala Lumpur, I was considered an administrator, basically, because my good fortune was that all the principals really wanted to also have me there, because I took a load off of their work and could get the teachers, but I wasn't supervising any teachers. So they knew that I could actually get a curriculum written, that I could get the fine arts people who I loved working with, but putting things on paper, not going to happen. And, they actually thrived in that area. So I thought, what's my next step? So the next step was going to be a line administrator. I was looking at principalships then after 6 years. So again, at this point, then the connections you make with people in the international world, after your second sort of position overseas, you've started to, these tentacles reach out. And not only did I have Bob Sills, but I had Dick Kreitzer, and I had Joe Stucker and Dennis Larkin. I had a lot of administrators. And at that point, most were male, who were supporting my inroads into education, administration. And so I received an email from a friend. The email was now a part of my life.
Yay!
When I was in Rabat, we had one line. It was like an AOL probably. You've got mail. Thing. And everyone, it was one address. And so people who did have email would write, and everyone would receive email to the same account. And this secretary would print out all of it and then cut them apart into little slips. Oh my God. When I got to Kuala Lumpur, of course, it was a much different story. And everybody had their own account, and you had blah, blah, blah. You had the inner workings email and then the outside email. And so a friend who was in Buenos Aires wrote and said, Jane Lowry, who I had worked with in Kuala Lumpur, and she wrote and said, we're going to have a high school position, principal position. Are you interested? And I said, yes. And so...
And give us an idea of, if you remember the timing, because that tends to be almost a year and a half in advance, is it not?
It is now, but
by
then it was, you started hearing about the principal, even the head of school role at that point was, schools would advertise in August to October and hopefully have their head of school for the next year by November of the year prior. So you had really 7 months. Greg.
Wow.
And they had Thai Online back then, too, the newspaper that came out quarterly. So you could go through at the beginning of the year, like around October, and start shopping around if you're piqued your interest a little bit.
Yeah.
And then you'd send out an email to them, and because they had all the advertisements. Half of it would be great articles, and half of it would be the advertisements for the
ads,
schools.
Yeah.
But that was, I remember those days. It was an actual newspaper, came out quarterly. And that was one of the ways that you could reach out. I'd go into a superintendent office in the early 2000s, and every time I go into one of their offices, there's, no matter what school I was in, there's a Thai Online, and there's a copy for staff, maybe in the staff room. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was making a connection there about time.
For sure. And prior to that, Search would send you out this booklet like this. And
Search was coming up. Yeah.
People don't understand
paper. Yes, that's right. It was like a catalog of jobs or of the information that is now
you
online.
And I did the
their
same
database.
Thing. Yes. You and I did the same thing. You'd send them a check. In 2000, I sent them a check at Christmas. I got one a couple weeks later in the mail, and it was a big, thick pamphlet of every school alphabetical, and Search did the same kind of thing. That was a different age back then, but all right, let's take a moment for a little commercial about how to get in touch with us. You can, of course, find all four of us at the itpexpat.com. That's www.itpexpat.com.
Or you could also find us at email at internationalteacherpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you.
Or if you're into Facebook, we have a Facebook group at www.facebook.com/groups/ITPexpat, where you can find all kinds of inside information about ITP Expat.
You can also find us on Instagram at International Teacher Podcast, at our handle.
All right, and thank you, listeners. We have over 100 countries represented by our listeners, and though we're not monetized, we are here for you, and we would like to thank all of you for listening. So let's get back to the show. I have a question. So you had, at the time, you had directorships that were mainly male, and it still is a lot male, but they were looking out for you. They had you on their radar, and you were being groomed for those. And that's something we talk about a lot on the show, is that international schools tend to groom within the schools. If you're a superintendent, head of school, you'd groom the principals, and principals groom the APs, the assistant principals, et cetera. And of course, your intermediary, your curriculum coordinators. It's great to hear this historically. It was in place before, because I tell a lot of people that is one way they do it. They also do hire directly, but grooming within and grassroots, because it builds that historically you follow each other, right?
Yes.
And you have somebody else gets to head of school. You might go to principalship at a new school later on down the line.
Right.
I got it. Okay.
And in a way, it still is. It's not
Absolutely.
necessarily as much as what you know as
who you know. It's just, I always tell people it's the smallest school district in the world, but it's worldwide. Because everybody knows each other. And I tell people, you were talking about this before, where the heads of school at that job fair were talking about you.
Yep.
And I've always told people, I've written about it, that, hey, watch out. Those guys are all the admin
They
are
all
talking
know each
about
other.
they all know each other,
Yeah.
and they're all talking about it. It's like they're trading cards, and they're talking about, it really is that way during those job fairs.
Well, and that's what I was saying about like Jim Ambrose and Rick Spradling and Bob Sills. They all three were very good friends, and they all knew that they were looking at me for this position. And so it was like, what are you going to do? Are you going to make an offer? Blah, 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 blah. And then all you had to do is say, oh, well, I think I'm going to get an offer from. And then the offer started to come. When I was supporting and nurturing people, I would say it's not about you, it's about the fit. And you always have to go into every position that you apply for. And if you don't get it, know that it's not about you personally most of the time. It's about the fit and will it work? And you don't want to go to a place where the fit is not going to be good, because it's not going to fill you with joy. And that's a really important component to it. So they're not only interviewing you, you must be prepared to interview them. And
I tell you what, listeners, you have to understand that there's a reason why I called my book Finding the Right Fit. And it hasn't been a bestseller. It's not on everybody's mantle or anything like that. But I tell you what, if you go to a job fair, listeners, you have to listen to Robin here. This is from the experienced of the experienced, before telephones in the Congo, right? Finding the right fit is about matching a school. It's a dating game over 2 days, a dating game over 4. And you guys, the admin, I say you guys, but I mean gently though, the admin are talking about the recruiters, the recruitees, as much as we are talking about them. And the other thing, Robin, you can back me up on this, but my number one advice to anybody going to a job fair is transparency.
Yep.
So you were being very transparent with those heads of school, saying, I'm going to walk across the hall and I'm going to go talk to Bob. And then I'm going to go talk to Jim at 4:00. So you can make a decision now. My cards are on the table.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. I was, I'm from Wisconsin. So what you see is what you get. And I'm not going to hide anything. Here it is. I've got these interviews. If they said, well, where else are you interviewing? I would say I'm interviewing with X, Y, and Z. I'm interested in everything, blah, blah, blah. And they know that. And that's one of the other things I would always say is be open and honest, and never, if you are not prepared to do something, if they ask you a question, and this is more when you get to being a head of school, I'll get to that more
That'll
later.
never happen.
But if you say, yes, I know a lot about that, or yes, I can do that, and you don't have a clue, you better prepare yourself before you get, if you're offered that job, that was the first job. My teaching job was in Sparta, Wisconsin. And Frank Borg asked me, what about coaching volleyball? This was not in Title IX was not a part of reality then. So women's athletics were not even a reality at most schools. They were just starting to be. And I said, yes, I can coach. I played volleyball in elementary school. Yes, I can coach. I went to, not online, I went to Read More bookstore, and I bought every single book I could about coaching volleyball.
Brush up on volleyball real quick.
Yeah.
Real quick, and became a head volleyball coach. So I was supposed to be an assistant, and then I got there and they said, oh no, you're going to be the head coach. And I thought, oh my God, man, I better go to something.
Well, at least now when you get hired at a job fair, most of the time, a lot of the jobs are handed out or awarded, or your matches are made early enough that you have 6 months to 8 months to get prepared for that next position, the next curriculum that you're looking at, because the number one word is adaptable. Yeah. That's the nature of overseas, is we need to be adaptable, but don't bite off more than you can chew. Don't say, I'm going to go teach French if you've never taken French before, just because you want to get in the school, right? Leave that up to JP.
Yeah, exactly. So getting back to your question, JP, about, how far in advance, at that time, that was in the early 2000s. And so at that time, you, as an administrator at principalship, you probably were looking at being hired at a fair, not prior to a fair, so in February. But you started interviewing and everything. And, honestly, that's what happened with, I remember going to the fair, and Phil Jocelyn was the head of school at Lincoln. And
in Buenos Aires, because there's a few Lincolns, but
Buenos Aires. And he knew ahead of time. I think he had made up his mind. He loved Jane, and he had met me. We had visited before, like the year before. We went to Buenos Aires to visit Jane, and so I knew.
And he likely talked to people about you, right? Yeah,
because the internet was a reality then, and phones did work everywhere. And again,
the internet was probably dial-up.
Yeah, and I know what you're going to say. I've always known this, and it happened to me one time at a job fair. But I know for a fact, as a recruiting teacher, I will never go into admin. But I've always known, and I figured out that the admin, I keep saying you people, but the admin, go into those job fairs with a top 5 list or a top 10 list of their marks and fight for them. And the rest of us criminal. I know, right? But the rest of us that are not earmarked, or we're not headhunted ahead of time, that show up at the fair, then we are in a domino effect. And there's, I don't want to go into all of it, but I know that there are certain people that you're on my list. I'm going to go for you, and you're my number one pick. We'll let you know that maybe even before the night before the fair. We'll have some dinner. We'll contact before, and it's a huge game. But you can verify that for me, right? You guys, yep. I see you smiling. You admin generally go in with a top list of the recruiters of the teachers that they need for their team, and that's just a face-to-face meet. And I love, see, I'm just getting all this verification from you, Robin.
Yes. Well, and again, it's changed even more with everything, Skype became a reality then when I was in Buenos Aires. And so, but Phil, when I was at the recruiting fair, he said, I interviewed with Phil, and I interviewed with a couple of other schools. And Phil then said, why don't you come with me and let's do some interviews? He hadn't offered me the job yet. He said, I want to interview.
He wanted you to interview
That's awesome.
teachers for his school.
Yes,
I guess it makes sense. He wants to see what you're going to be like in an
beautiful.
interview situation.
He did for the first interview. And then Phil, he liked to be with people. So he said, okay, I'm going to let you just continue interview the next few people. And and I walked out of there, and I got a call from I think it was New Delhi, and they said, we want to, but they left a message on the hotel phone, because this was at Search now, not at UNI. And they said, we want to talk to you about a potential offer. And I thought, well, Phil has not even made me an offer yet. And I'm going,
I've been interviewing teachers for school.
So they have those receptions, and I went to the reception and I said, Phil, I just got a call from New Delhi, and they want to talk to me about making me an offer. And he said, well, you're not free, you're not available. And I said, Phil, you've never made me an offer. And he won't remember.
I want to meet Phil because that is just a great story.
It is. And that's as
he was already like 6 steps ahead of you, but forgot that he didn't make you an offer.
Absolutely. And that as a head of school, a lot of times I have a dream and I think it's a reality. I have a dream that I've offered this person a job, and they're going to come and join the school. No, not until you make that offer. And so moving to Buenos Aires, and in that line position, supervising, it was a new change, and that was the thing for my career path. I always changed. I wanted a new challenge, the next position I wanted to go to. It wasn't necessarily working myself up a ladder. That just so happened to be that's what you did that's what you do in education, because, lateral moves are lateral moves, but I wanted the biggest challenge. And so I was at Kuala Lumpur for 6 years, and then I was in Buenos Aires for 6 years as a high school principal. And that was probably the pivotal point in my career. And it's when ISS and Marianne Haas started the women's leadership seminar during the summer. And Phil put my name in for that the second year. And I went to and was with a group of women who were heads of school who it probably had the most influential impact on my whole career and my ways of knowing and being and doing, and my commitment to supporting and nurturing not only women, but men and women, but particularly women in their quest for a headship or a leadership role. Because I think that paying it forward is one of the most critical gifts we can give ourselves as educators and the future and helping kids. So that was a big impact. And of course, that was the, Ellen Stern, the Linda Duval, the
Rose Puffer.
Yes, Rose Puffer. I mean, you name it, and they were there. And I said, I want to be a head of school. And so in my fourth year in Argentina, or third year going to go into my fourth year, I went to Phil and I said, there's a position for a head of school open in Rabat. And he looked at me, he said, you're not ready yet.
Ooh.
Great leader.
Someone's telling me I'm not ready for something. And I said, what do you mean? He said, give me 2 more years and you will be ready. And so he set me up on the finance committee with the board level, the personnel committee. He said, I want you to work with Carlos on doing a full school budget and find out how he handles currency fluctuation and the faces. I mean, he did everything to prepare me, and not himself directly, but facilitating the opportunities for me to learn and grow and actually feel confident in it. That was the best thing that an administrator ever said to me was, you're not ready yet, but I'll do everything I can to get you ready.
Yeah, because at first you might think, well, he just doesn't want to have to hire another high school principal. But in fact, it was not a selfish thought. It was a beneficial for you thought. He was thinking, how do I get you ready so that you see success in that position?
Yep.
However,
Beautiful.
on the other way of looking at it too is that there's a little bit of that selfishness too, because the people that you train and they go through the system, and Robin, you went through and you were very successful, I would imagine, at that next school when you were ready, and that reflected on him also. He had pride in being able to help you get to that point and knowing that you weren't ready. And I've appreciated that from superiors in different industries and different careers. Somebody that has that kind of vision that says, like you said, you're not ready, but I'm going to support you, and I want you to train with me or train and let me facilitate you all the way up to that point, and you'll know when you're ready.
Right.
I love that. That is a warm story.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and that's, as teachers going into it, we need to be able to do that as experienced teachers with new teachers coming into the classroom. I think about being a team leader or a department chair,
mentor,
or moving in. You don't have to be an administrator to do that. If you're in education, you have to be a person who's willing to support and nurture everyone who comes in after you with what you know and just different ways of knowing and doing and being, so that you can really pay it forward. And
that's the heart of our show, Robin. You just named it. That's why Matt and I started it. That's why these ladies are here. Yeah. We're still doing it, and we're getting paid absolutely nothing because we don't want anything. We won't monetize.
We're just paying the knowledge forward.
We are paying it forward and letting people know about the best kept secret in education, right?
Exactly.
That's exactly what it is, Robin, right?
So now we're dying to know, where was your first headship?
At the American International School of Zagreb. So I had been
Game of Thrones.
Yes. I had been to Africa. I had been to Southeast Asia. I had been to South America, Europe.
Eastern Europe.
Where am I going to go? I'm going to go to Europe because I had, and again, this headship position was during the month of November of 2006. I was going to start a headship in July or August 2007. So that's 8 months.
Yeah, so 9 months. Yeah, I know. And now these days, I have seen as early as April for a year and a half later.
Well,
April
and that's what Abu Dhabi was for me. So anyway, I had four schools that I was going to interview. 3 were in Africa, and 1 was Zagreb. And Zagreb was my first interview. And I felt, at that point, having been on a number of accreditation teams and a number of different schools and visiting, you can tell if there's a good heart in the school. And just by
Did they fly you in?
Yeah.
Before you made your decision, you got to meet people?
You interviewed. At that point, they really did try to bring, and heads of school, that's the common practice now. You fly in the candidates, they interview. It had been, the trend was 1 every week. Usually it's 2 or 3 that they would bring in. Now there's different combinations, and I'll share that if you're interested. But
yeah, listeners, we're talking about head of school, superintendent in the States of many schools, but a district superintendent. We're talking about the head of an international school. Right. We're not talking about teachers
and top 3
here.
Candidates. Like, they're not flying in 7, 8 people. It's they've whittled down from the 10s, A-list. 20s of the A-list candidates. Okay,
you have a long list, then you have a short list, and then you have a finalist list.
Yeah.
So, and what I did was I already had my ticket to Bamako, Mali, which was the next school. And then it was Luanda, Angola, and Harare, or Lusaka. And so I didn't have the tickets to those 2 schools yet, the airfare. But I did have to Bamako because I was quite interested in that. Search was running the fairs, and John Magana was the person who said, "Oh, Bamako, Mali, that you want to see." And he talked to me about, do you want to go to this school with a bunch of oil people there, or do you want to go to that school where they have just fired so and so, and do you want to go? And so he would ask these questions where you knew darn well where he felt I should go. John. And I wanted Zagreb. I was offered the position, and I said, I need to honor my commitment to Bamako. I will let you know 1 week from today. Call me again. And that was the start of, that was also, Skype was very popular at that time. That was, no, it was just becoming popular at that time. That was the 2006, 2007 years. Yeah. And I went to Bamako, and I felt I'd been to Africa. I want a new location. And so Zagreb became my first headship. The school was 180 students. It was
K to 12?
K to 12. And as a head of school, you did everything. You did everything.
With a school that size, yeah. So you didn't have an elementary principal, middle school principal, secondary or high school principal.
I had one person who was sort of a principal, but also teaching principal. Mm-hmm. And it was the best move I could make at that time. Other schools were larger that I was interviewing with, but this one, the location and the opportunity to learn the operational part of. Yeah. I had the education part down. That was not an issue after being director of teaching and learning in Kuala Lumpur and a principal in Buenos Aires, but it was that operational side. I call it
working with a board, working with parents a lot more. You were the headship, so it needed to be, you needed that practice. Yeah.
Right. Well, and I called it, I'm a C word person: curriculum, caring, children, compassion, community, communication, blah, blah, blah. I didn't like the B words: boards, balls, buses, budgets, and
nice.
Yeah. But I realized as a head of school, those B words were needed to make the C words come true. And so that was a balancing act. And so in Zagreb, we grew the school to 280 students and set it up for an eventual new build and new school, a couple of years after I left to go on to Abu Dhabi. It was a great experience, but it was winter. You had to deal with winter. And it was my first experience too, as a head, in hiring all of the teachers and in knowing how to do that and how to engage it. It was also the time when email and Skype, not Zoom yet, it was all Skype and not WhatsApp, all Skype, telephone interviews. But also one of the biggest things I learned as an administrator, probably even in Kuala Lumpur, but more so in Buenos Aires and definitely in Zagreb, is that you never just take written recommendations. You always follow it up with 2 personal phone calls to 2 different people to verify what was being said.
Isn't that amazing that has fallen a little bit by the wayside, but then now child safeguarding has put it back on the table. But there was a period there where I, as a head of department or a principal or a vice principal, was not getting called. And it's like, this is kind of the basic thing that you need to do before you hire someone, is just to check what is being written about them. It's true.
The quality schools that I've worked at and the quality staff I've worked at have been because of that. Yeah. And I can only imagine that. I mean, I have been at some schools and bad fits. We'll talk about a right fit, but I've had that negative experience where I was at a school where I'm like, nobody checked this person's background because there's no way they would have hired them. if that person had their head on straight at the time. Maybe there was a transition between Headship and hiring, and somebody's hiring that's not going to be there the next year, and they weren't caring enough. But I totally agree with you, and that's one of the reasons why I always think that the job fairs are going to be face to face, and like especially the important positions that you need to fill, that you want to keep somebody on for not just a 2-year contract, but 4 years or 6 years.
Yeah.
And build your team. You're going to want to meet these people face to face. It starts maybe with a word of mouth and a trust between you and another head, or another word of mouth for them, but meet them. Definitely. Yeah. I'm sorry. Definitely. Go ahead. It's exciting to hear you talk about this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so another thing, as a head of school, Robin is, neutral gender. If you're more British, it's male, and US, very few, but
and this was way before photos on CVs.
Oh yeah. And so when I would get emails inquiring about jobs, if they say Mr. Heslip, I didn't even answer them. I just put it in the trash. And that's a piece of advice I'll give to any teacher: is do your research, get on the website, find out what that head of school, or whoever you're writing to, find out how you're going to address them. And if you can't find out, use their first and last name, period.
That is so powerful. I love the fact you just toss them because they didn't do their research.
Yeah. And I mean, with LinkedIn these days, there's no excuse. There's the website. You go check out the website and see what the superintendent signs off as. You look to see if they have an Ed.D. after their initials, so that you can say, "Dear Dr. Heslip," and you're showing your research.
Yeah. So another thing too was that I always did a written, I get this, and then I had a series of really 4 questions, and they were open-ended questions. And one of them was, "Do you have any questions of me?" So the emails I got back, I wanted to look for, were they responding? How were they responding? Were they articulate? Were they able to communicate? Were they answering the question? And then do you have any questions for me? And this is a personal thing, so I don't know. I had one person write 20 different questions. Oh my God. That's
read the category
of high maintenance.
Yeah.
Can I ask, what kind of questions were you expecting from them? Or what did you think that you would, I don't know. I'm just curious as a teacher now,
Well, with my background as curriculum, instruction, and professional development, I always wanted to see someone who wanted to continue their learning. So I liked questions about in what ways does the school try to support teachers and in their continued growth in education. That was a really important question for me. Another was, what is the onboarding? What should I prepare for when I'm moving to Zagreb or moving to Abu Dhabi? What are the top 3 things that I should be prepared for when moving there? In Abu Dhabi, it was, you need to be prepared for heat of 110 degrees when you arrive, and everything's air conditioned, and you probably will be living indoors a little bit more. So,
6 months of the year.
The questions that I liked were more about their professional learning and growth, about what they could do in order to better prepare themselves for a move. Should I be moving to Zagreb? What are the things that would help me in my transition? Help me that I should know moving in the transition. And then another one that I always liked was, but this is more in an interview, I always asked, what questions do you wish I would have asked you that I didn't ask you?
Another way of saying that is is there something that you wish you had shared with me, but you didn't get asked?
Exactly.
Yeah. Are we missing something?
Yeah, because, that inevitably becomes a more personal type of thing. What are you?
Well, and there and then and there in the interview, like every interview is different. So maybe they didn't ask you about your curriculum experience and you want to be able to share that. Or maybe another interview, they asked you about coaching experience, but not extracurricular. So you want to be able to tell them that story.
Exactly. So that's always one. And I think that another question was, it varied. It could either be, if it was more personal, that was always, I like to get to know the person personally. It was much more about a fit culturally and personally. See, there's the art of teaching and there's the science of teaching. And the science of teaching, we can help people grow and learn and that. But the art of teaching is much more about culture, and it's in your heart. And that there has to be a connection. There has to be a connectedness with the administration, with the other teachers in the group. And that comes out through knowing more about that person personally. It's very hard to catch, but it's one of those things that that you can also ask when you call on the phone. What's this person like in a faculty meeting?
I was going to say, the other thing is, it's such a puzzle for you. I admire the international leaders, because when when somebody else is sitting in front of you in an interview, you're also thinking about how they fit into the team that you're going to put them in. And if they're abrasive, if they're that creative, that's over the top, bubbly, there's personality traits that are going to define us, that you get to know and may play for or against us. And it's not something personal. It's a puzzle you're putting together, and it might not be the right time because you have some other pieces of the puzzle in place already that it won't work. And I accept that. I hate that. I mean, I hate going into an interview and finding out later I know it was something I said, right? Yeah. It wasn't the right fit at the right time.
Yeah, at the right time is a key. I think too, one piece of advice is something that I always looked for is, where do they put students and in their decision-making process? This was with teachers. If they talked about what they did as a teacher, I wanted to hear about what the kids did that showed you as a teacher that they were learning. That's really there's a big difference there. And that shift in talking about me versus talking about the people around me, the kids that, like I said, within, a half an hour at being at a school, I could tell if that school had the kind of heart just by the kids that I would meet and the way that they would either open doors or just ignore who I was or say, can we help you, when I'm standing out and looking like, where on earth am I on this campus? When I was interviewing, I always looked to the kids and their reaction. But so Zagreb taught me a great deal about a lot of the operational parts of a school, but also building that community and expanding that community and working with a board. You are not there as the head of school. You are hired by the board and you become a part of the board. You're working in partnership with the board. And so it's a very lonely position.
That's why heads of school network with each other, because they can commiserate, with phone calls and emails back and forth, assuming and presuming confidentiality,
And so then, it was moving into 6 years, and I thought, and I'll be very honest, the head position wasn't my favorite position. I didn't find a lot of joy in it. But in Zagreb, I knew every child's name. I knew every family that was there because it was small enough. Yeah. And I knew that my next move would be something very different and bigger if I went into a headship. So I applied for principalship because really, honest to God, that was my favorite position, was high school principal. for a lot of reasons, mainly the kids, and how you could help them. I would teach them how to ask questions. Never ask a yes or no question. Be a bowler, not a crap shooter when you ask a question. Under what circumstances? Not a yes or no. And so I did apply for headships. There were 4 schools, and now this is an interesting one. Abu Dhabi had gone through a search already. No, they had just hired a new head, and they had to fire that person like a week after that person got there. A big long story.
Speaking of wrong fit,
yeah,
right? Wrong fit.
Yeah, wrong hire. And so they had to open another search, but this was in March of 2012. And I would have started in July of 2013. So a year and a half, basically. So I was going to Saigon South in Vietnam, Kuala Lumpur, ISKL in Kuala Lumpur, Rabat American School in Rabat, and ACS, American Community School of Abu Dhabi.
But 2 of those schools you'd been at, and I've always heard it say, don't go back because it's never the same. Is that something that came into mind?
I learned that in interviewing and in there. I think some people can be successful, but you already know going in what was a struggle. So there's not really any kind of honeymoon when you go back. There's not any real newness or a fresh look, or you have a feeling about what you already know that is going to be a challenge. And that's what I learned with Abu Dhabi, or with ISKL and Rabat. When I interviewed, I knew in both places that it wouldn't work for me and probably for them.
Plus, there's 209 countries. I mean, seriously, there's a lot of schools out there, right?
Exactly.
That was just
and you hadn't been to the Middle East yet.
Exactly. And so the
Australia.
region I hadn't been to was the NISA region. And so, and when I went and I was on the campus, and this is so literally true, I was on the campus for 15 minutes. And I loved their mission and their vision and their focus on the arts, athletics, academics, and service learning. And the kids you could just feel it. You could just feel it with the kids. I would be standing there looking at which building do I go into now? And inevitably, not more than 30 seconds, a student would come up and say, "Can we help you find a place?" And "Hi, I'm so-and-so. Are you one of the candidates for the head of school position?"
Wow.
You know, it was one of the things that this was going from a school of 270 at the end to a school of 1,000. And, you know, boards have to be particular about that. This is a person has never been in the Middle East, is a woman. But the Middle East has always had its fair share of female leaders. So I will give credit where credit is due. That region has always been a little bit ahead with having female heads, probably because they know the women are the ones that really work in that.
I would like to agree with that.
Yeah, it's true.
We're doers.
Yes, and also the whole how can you run a large school? I tell you, I think that schools need to look more for people who have had that experience as a small school head, because they have had that whole.
They wear many hats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get it. And so I knew going into Abu Dhabi, this would be my swan song overseas. It would be my final posting. So I was looking at a 5 to 7 year posting. I was 6 years then in Zagreb, 6 years in Buenos Aires, 6 years in Kuala Lumpur, 4 years in Rabat. I would have stayed longer, but the positions were open. And so 5 to 7, I knew that was coming with, and I was thinking, it ended up that Abu Dhabi made the offer. I was so happy to go there. And Bob Gross was the interim head of school for that year.
Mm-hmm.
And he and I talked every single week. And we hired a new elementary principal, a new elementary assistant principal, a new high school principal, a new high school assistant principal, a new director of teaching and learning, a new athletic director, a new admissions person, a new CFO. I mean, there were 9, a new director of technology.
That was all in the interim year?
We hired for the year that I was starting.
For the year that you were going to be starting. So yeah. Everyone was going to be starting at the same time.
We started meeting as a leadership team 7 months before we arrived.
Makes sense.
And met and got to know each other virtually. Again, Zoom wasn't a thing then, but Skype was. And so Abu Dhabi, wow, it was great. And, each location in which I've lived, I've taken a part of a learning with me that it became a part of who I am. In Kinshasa, it was to live each day to its fullest extent, because I saw so much suffering and so much, but happiness, people dancing and just, living life, even though they faced death on a daily basis there. In Rabat, it was to always look up and enjoy the beauty above rather than just looking forward or looking down, because so much about the Moroccan culture is they have their homes with the courtyard in the middle and the openness above to see the heavens, to see the beauty above. In Kuala Lumpur, it was the dance of diplomacy, to be respectful, to listen, to engage, and to take whatever you could from every conversation that you had, and to be diplomatic in a way that, it's a multicultural society, and they have been able to exist more peacefully than many in that kind of. In Buenos Aires, it was the importance of family and making sure that you carved out, no matter what, it was a sacred to have your asados, your family get-togethers. It was family first. In Zagreb, it was the beauty of and pride in one's nationality and one's nationality, to be a Croatian, to be from France. That was very, very much a part of it. And in Abu Dhabi, in the UAE, it was the beauty of spirituality. And I think that's much a part of the Middle East that you take away, is that true beauty of the meaning of Eid, the meaning of a faithful life, and that spirituality. The unfortunate events of today in the Middle East they break my heart, because I know what it really is in that. And so that was Abu Dhabi. I learned a great deal about being a head of school. It's lonely. You do network. I think though networking starts, you need to start networking at the teacher level as soon as you possibly can. And with each of the regional organizations, AMISA, Tri-Association, CISA, ECIS, ASA, AIRCOS, NISA, all of them have opportunities for teachers to get engaged with each other, and they should take advantage of that every single opportunity they get, online, in person, because it's building that network of connections and an understanding of what it's like to live elsewhere and to be a part of that. So coming back to the States, I made a list. I always made a list of my A, B, C, D, E, and F plans. And, my A plan was to be a regional education officer with the Office of Overseas Schools. I could keep my feet in both worlds. I could, it was time to come home. I found myself, we had a condo on the beach here in Flagler Beach for a number of years. And one morning, it was such a beautiful sunrise. And I was looking at it, having my coffee, and I heard myself say, this was the summer of 2015, I think. 15, yeah, I think it was. And I had just learned that Bill Powell had passed away. And I heard myself say out loud, maybe it's time to come home. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I went back and I told the board it was the summer of 2016. My last, I'll be leaving in July of 2018.
You gave them 2 years notice.
Yeah, I gave them 2 years. And of course they were a little bit hesitant to start a search because they felt that, we can talk her into another year. And I because I also knew from B. Cameron at the Office of Overseas Schools, she was my REO, Regional Education Officer, when I was in Abu Dhabi, that there would be a position open in the office. And so that led me to, when I left Abu Dhabi, I came back to the States, moved to Washington, D.C., and was...
you had to be there then?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, at least for the first year, and then COVID hit, and you're
everybody went online.
But I was the regional education officer for 6 years for Mexico, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean, the best part of the world.
Yay!
As far as that, it really is. So, and
which involved a lot of travel, which involved a lot of school visits, something that was in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, and I was as a regional education officer, I was a life coach for foreign service families who were looking, what do I do? How do I do it? What should I be thinking about for my child? I was a consultant to schools in many ways, and I was a mentor to heads of school, and also to boards, to board chairs and to boards, because it is the region that has the most female heads and female leaders. And I would like to take some of the fulfillment of having pushed in that direction and supported, nurtured and supported the growth of female leadership, not only there, but worldwide. But also, again, I have, really been actively supportive of everyone who is looking for a head position, for a principal position, in ways that I know that they're going to be good for kids, because I always put the kids at the center of the decisions when I'm doing that. So that's 50 years. Wow.
That is amazing.
Yeah, almost 50 years. Yeah.
So now you stepped back out of the Office of Overseas Schools. retired to Florida, or are you still semi-retired at this point, Robin?
Well, I say I'm retired, but I don't think educators ever really retire completely. I'm doing consultant work with boards and schools on good governance, because I think if there's one thing that every single school needs in an American international school overseas, it's help with making sure the board and the head have a good balanced relationship and know the difference between operational issues and strategic issues and who has those areas, and helping boards figure that out is something I like to do. So, but I get to choose, and it's,
I was going to say you don't like the bees, but you're helping out the bees.
I know.
Yeah.
But so
To lead to the seas.
It's your choice,
teams
though.
are successful.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it all leads down to the kids. That's where it goes.
Exactly, the children. Yeah. So that's it. I mean that.
And I mean, I'm sure they don't need it, but if they wanted to reach out to you, if a school board governor was listening and thinking, geez, this is exactly who we need, how do they find you? On LinkedIn, first of all?
Yeah, I'm
Do you
on
have a
LinkedIn.
website or anything like that?
No, because that would mean
She's
I'm
too busy. She's retired, dude.
Yeah.
They can go through us. They can go through us, and we'll filter them for you. Okay, we'll do the initial interview of that board for you.
Yeah, thank you. But I also think AAIE has its good governance section, and I'm one of the people who's had the training in good governance, which is a curriculum that the National Association of Independent Schools, NACE, in the United States, has done a lot of research and work on. And then David Hoynatsky and Rick Detweiler, two well-known international heads of school and leaders, edited and wrote the International Trustee Handbook. So took the NACE handbook for governance for independent schools in the States and shifted it to what do international schools need to know, and developed a full curriculum. So, yeah.
I have a good question for you.
Yes.
Based on that, and this is sort of piggybacking on that, is that my question is, I'm moving to Florida for a year to be with my dad for dad-tirement, but I'm afraid that I'm going to get drawn into some kind of educational local stuff, right? Because I need something to do. I'm wondering, you're in Florida now. Are you doing anything locally with education? Is your focus always been on and always will be on international?
Yes. Yeah.
I feel that's the same way about me. I can't imagine going back to the U.S. and being involved in anything unless it's just helping out at the library or something. I really don't see it. And it sounds like you're very embedded into the international. That's your arena. That's your life. It sounds like. Am I right?
And being in Florida, you can reach out to Derek Rhodes. He's the executive director of AMISA, which is the American International School Association, American International Schools of the Americas.
Right.
And they have their teacher conference. They have a lot of online work, or the Tri Association is also another venue. Because you're in Florida, you've got a great location for that. And doing online.
I was just wondering if you were. I'm not looking for work. I'm doing dad. I'm going to spend time with dad, and I'm going to. You know what I might do? And Robin, I might go back to you and I. In fact, JP and I might go hang out and meet first time ever in life, real life, to meet at one of the job fairs, because that's my thing. I love job fairs.
There's
but I'm going to look
AMISA
for
and GRC in Miami.
The GRC and AMISA together. I'm thinking about, and I appreciate you're mentioning all these things in Florida. My question was just aimed at you, really, to see, because I don't have any feeling of doing that locally. I need to be over in a country, really. That's my feeling. Yeah. But I appreciate it. It's just exciting. I know all that stuff's in Florida too, right? Oh.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. If anyone really knows me, the irony, first of all, that I entered the Department of State under a particular administration in 2018. I left
Enough said.
before that administration came back. But I'm in Florida, for God's sake. It's
Yeah.
I just have to, sort of.
Robin,
ways.
I don't imagine this is the case, but we have 2 questions on the ITP, and I would love to hear if you have a police story that you could share with our audience.
I know
I
she
don't
does.
imagine
She's
that's
1,000.
the case, but I don't, we just want to see.
So when I was in Rabat, I had a good friend, Barbara Parker, and she and I Morocco was very easy to travel in as women. And so we would take a lot of weekend trips to different parts of Morocco. And I was driving one time, and of course, not really paying attention to the speed limit. And we were pulled over. You actually aren't, chased in a car and pulled over. They just sort of flag you down, wave you over. And Barbara spoke, fluent Arabic and was very good in French. And this Moroccan policeman comes over. He has it looks like a brand new uniform on and everything. And I knew enough French that he asked me for my driver's license. And before I could say anything, Barbara starts talking to him in Arabic, and I could tell what she was saying. The bottom line was she right away started talking to him about his new uniform and, did they make that in Italy, and how good you're looking, and just how spiffy it was, and blah, 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 blah. Nothing about why we were pulled over. Anyway, we drove away without a ticket, without anything else. I learned with the police the art of deflection. And I used it in Kuala Lumpur when I was driving along and talking on a cell phone, because you didn't have I was talking on a cell phone. You shouldn't have been
Bluetooth and all that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I was pulled over, and the policeman wanted to know, wanted my driver's license, and I didn't have my Malaysian driver's license. I had my Wisconsin driver's license. So I pulled it out and he said, and they spoke English. So what is this? And I said, Wisconsin. He said, what is this? And I said, Green Bay Packers. And it was the year that the Green Bay Packers were going to the Super Bowl. And so, and so, everyone knew. And so was that art of deflection. We started talking about it, and then he said, oh, go.
And I like
Green
your
Bay
uniform.
Packer fan doesn't need a ticket.
He was a Packer fan, I bet.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great stories. You have 1,000 more. I know you do. I wish we had more time.
Oh, yeah. No. Some of them I won't share.
Second question?
Yes.
Somebody?
Okay, so second question that we always ask, what 3 things do you bring with you to a new place that don't have heartbeats?
That don't have heartbeats.
Yeah.
I had a little basket of photos. It's the same photos of all of the years, and I would add a little bit, like printed out photos. It's before digital. But even when I went to places where it did become digital, I would do some prints of certain things. And I had that basket with me all of the time. That was number one, because especially in Zagreb and Abu Dhabi, being lonely at times, you reached for that and just could laugh and just different things. The second thing was I always made sure I had one artifact, a basket from Malaysia. It was a pyramid made out of malachite from Zaire. From Rabat, it was a carpet. One definite piece that I always took with me to remind me again of where I had been. And the third thing would be my dogs that I got in And I got 2 toy poodles in.
But they have heartbeats,
I know
Robin.
they have heartbeats, and so you can't really say that. But I don't know what else. My mother had made a quilt when she was 12 years old. And I took that quilt with me to every location. Yeah, and it's hanging in my bedroom now. So, and it's old. And it reminded me of her. Never on the bed. It was always a hanging piece. So, yeah. Those would be the top 3 things.
Lovely.
Yeah.
What am I going to put for a title of this episode? I have no idea. We have heard from you starting out in education through 50 years of just memories and experience as a leader, as a woman and a leader in schools overseas around the world. And it's just so give us a summary. How many schools were you in over the years?
Well, if you count Sparta as my U.S. school, and then Kinshasa, Rabat, Kuala Lumpur, Buenos Aires, Zagreb, and Abu Dhabi.
Wow.
7 schools, 7 countries.
It is so amazing to talk to you. And I think you validated, in my opinion, you validated everything I talk about and share and pay forward. We haven't gotten into so many other things, but I think you just validate. And I love talking to those of you, you're included in this, is that those of you who have gone before us and set the stage for us. And it's really wonderful when I run into somebody at a job fair that has been overseas since the 70s or 80s, people that I'm sure personally know, that they reach out and we just have a conversation. It's like we know each other already. I feel like the minute you started talking, I'm like, she's in our tribe. We are part of her tribe. We are together on this journey, right? Wonderful to talk to you.
I think the biggest adjustment I had was that for 31 years when I was overseas, it was like I was on assisted living because everything was done for me. I come back to the United States and it's like I had to start doing things for myself. It was, oh my God, I did this.
I'm going to have to do my own laundry next year. God, what's with that? I'm a maid. I can't have a maid. That's one of my 3 things.
Can't have a massage.
Ice. Oh my God, I can't have a massage. I can't have a suit made for myself, right?
No.
Outrageous cost.
It isn't even the cost. It's the way, that whole idea of having the familiarity of.
Oh, I know a guy, right?
I know a guy.
In all the different countries you live in, you're like, I got a guy for this. I got a guy for this.
Well, Robin, I would really like to thank you for coming onto the show and accepting our invitation to share your journey. I know that our listeners, this is going to be one of their favorite episodes. They're going to voyage the world through your eyes and through your experience, just as we have today. So thank you so much. Greg, final thoughts?
I just gave mine. I don't know. I'm going to have to be, my final thought is you just inspire me, Robin, to stay in this and keep going. Yeah. I'm at 7 different schools, 7 countries and around the world, but I want to keep going till like I'm 90. I mean, I don't know how I'm going to work on this, but I think I might change my tune after being with Dad next year. I might change my tune, but initially now my feeling is I can't wait to get back out there. Yeah. I'm still here, but I can't wait to get out to my next school. But that's inspiring, and because of you, that just talking with you is that's what it is. Yeah.
Hannah?
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. As a TCK and now international educator, I still feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. And like hearing all these stories assures me of that. And hearing your stories, and like you've been doing this for a long time now. It's just, wow, it's fantastic. It's phenomenal to hear these stories. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on.
No, thank you. And the best thing is I don't have regrets about anything I've done. It's the best. Yeah. It gave me the best part of life, of seeing all different parts. Do I want to travel much now? No. A lot of people when they retire want to travel. I think being a regional education officer burnt me out with
Well, you've got two things. You have Sparta, Wisconsin. That's number one. And you're in Florida. That's another thing. I mean, you've got the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
But can we do one last thing? Can we have a little bit of, since you are the veteran and the guru about this, could you give some of our listeners that are going into international or thinking about it, could you give just a few pieces of advice? I know that's a big ask of me to do that, but what are some hidden gems that you would say?
One is explore all options. Don't pigeonhole yourself into thinking like one location is better than the other, or this position is what I'll be in forever, or I'll do this for 2 years and then I'll come back. Don't limit yourself. Don't put constraints. Keep the door open, because there's so many open doors that you can go through to find new experiences and new ways of knowing and doing and being that will bring you joy. The other is you will never regret doing what you do. You will only regret doing what you don't do. Mm. And so keep that in mind in the next step. If you make a choice not to go overseas, or you make a choice to stay overseas for only 2 years, 2 years only, or 4 years only, that's fine. You've made that choice. But think of it as a choice that you're making, and embrace that choice and make the most out of it, because you can always make another choice in 4 years by keeping the door open.
Well, from International Teacher Podcast, I'd like to thank our guest today, Dr. Robin Heslip, for coming onto the show. I'd like to thank Greg, the Single Guy. You can find his new book, Stay for the Show, on Amazon.com, children's book everywhere. I'd like to thank Hannah there in Iowa. Thank you for coming onto the show. And I'm Jacqueline from JP Mint Consulting, and thank you for joining us today. See you next time.
What a show, Rob.